Have you ever thought that if you now have a perfect life in the secular sense, living in a top-tier mansion with a private swimming pool, holding a generous retirement pension that you can never spend your entire life on, and being admired by thousands of people in your circle, suddenly one day, a voice you have, give away your mansion worth millions, throw away all the property you can't take away, and immediately walk towards a desolate desert full of deadly beasts and robbers, where you haven't even heard of your name? What would you do? You would think this is definitely crazy, wouldn't you? But this is not only a true history that has happened, but also the greatest. After watching today's video, I promise that whether you are currently in a career bottleneck at the age of 30 or feel that your life has taken shape at 70, you will completely change your perspective on the second half of your life. Listen to me, friends. Welcome back to the channel. The story we are going to talk about today. But throw away all the stereotypes in your minds. I bet when you hear this name, the image that comes to your mind must be a nomadic old man wearing a tattered robe, holding a wooden stick, and covered in dirt, wandering aimlessly in the desert with a few camels. Right? Absolutely. This is the first huge reversal we are going to uncover today. Abraham is not a penniless rural farmer at all. He is a bona fide top Manhattan tycoon. Imagine that you are 75 years old and have worked hard all your life to finally own a super luxury apartment with a rooftop garden in the heart of Manhattan. You have a driver when you go out, and the balance in your card is a long string of numbers. Your daily task is to have afternoon tea and enjoy your perfect retirement life. This is the true state of Abraham in you. You in front of the screen, who may be in your 30s, are struggling to catch your breath due to the pressure of mortgage and car loans and feel hesitant to change jobs easily. Or if you are already 50 or 60 years old and think, I am already at this age, what else can I do? Stability. We are too easily hijacked by our comfort zone. We always feel that the cost of change is too high, so we would rather stay in a box that looks to the end at a glance until we get old. However, at the age of 75, Abraham, while enjoying the highest level of material civilization among all mankind at that time, heard a voice saying, you must leave your homeland, your tribe, and your father's house, and go to... Then, he actually slapped his butt and gave up on the center of the world at that time, heading towards a wilderness full of unknowns. This is definitely an extremely exaggerated contrast. From a paradise like top metropolis to an unnamed desert with extremely low survival rates. From a wealthy person who owns everything to a homeless person sleeping in a tent. What exactly is this for? Has he gone crazy? In order to make you understand how crazy this is, we must use scientific and archaeological evidence to reconstruct what kind of place Ur was at that time. This is not a myth or legend, it is real hard science. In the 1920s, about 100 years ago, he led a joint archaeological team from the British Museum and the University of Pennsylvania to conduct a 12-year crazy excavation in the desert of southern Iraq. As a result, what they dug up shocked the whole world and completely overturned our understanding of the Abraham era. What did Sir Woolley discover? He dug up a highly developed super metropolis. Friends, we are talking about the year 2000 BC at that time. People in many parts of the world still lived in caves or mud-filled shantytowns. But what about Ur? Archaeological excavations have shown that Ur not only has a magnificent and huge golden pyramid-shaped temple, like a skyscraper, but also their residential buildings that are shocking. Woolley excavated a huge residential area. These houses are not thatched cottages, but two-story luxury villas, built with fired red bricks. Imagine this scene, following my logic. These houses from over 2,000 years ago actually have extremely complete drainage systems and indoor. When people in medieval Europe were still dumping excrement directly on busy streets, Abraham's neighbors were already using flush toilets and bathing systems at home. Not only that, archaeologists also discovered the ruins of the school, which contained piles of clay tablets and documents. What is written on these clay tablets? It is not just graffiti, but complex mathematical formulas, including square root, cubic root, and even geometric calculations, hundreds of years before Pythagoras' theorem. They have a well-established legal system and developed international trade. At that time, Ur was a super commercial hub on the banks of the Euphrates River, where ships could directly enter the city's port and bring in spices, gold, and bronze from ancient India and the Gulf of Oman. Now, do you understand what Abraham gave up? He gave up the highest quality medical security in the world, at that time, the top-notch educational resources, the absolutely safe urban defense system, and the convenient life of being able to buy luxury goods from all over the world when he went out. All of this is simply because an invisible and intangible. If it were you, would you believe it? If someone tells you today to donate all your current wealth and go deep into the Sahara Desert, I will make you the richest person in the world in the future. You will definitely call the police immediately. That is why this story can penetrate thousands of years and strike directly at, because this is not just an ancient story about faith. It is the ultimate case of how humans can break through the limits of security. Here, I would like to tell you a real case that happened in our era to help everyone better understand this underlying logic. I know a gentleman named Richard, whose life trajectory is like a modern version. When Richard was in his 50s, he was a senior vice president at a top tech company in Silicon Valley. He has extremely rich stock options and lives in a mansion in Palo Alto, California. His life is about attending high-end conferences, playing golf, enjoying top-notch. According to common sense, he only needs to stay comfortably for a few more years, to retire perfectly, and enjoy a life of cherishing his grandchildren. However, at the age of 50, Richard went on a trip to East Africa there. He saw a large number of children dying. He told me that he lies on a mattress worth tens of thousands of dollars every night, but he can't sleep all night long. He felt a strong call pounding his soul, just like that ancient call. After half a year of thinking, at the age of 51, Richard made a decision that surprised all his relatives and friends. He resigned from his executive position in Silicon Valley, sold his mansion in California, and moved to Rwanda with his wife. He used his savings and raised funds to establish a non-profit organization dedicated to digging wells and providing clean water sources for remote villages in Africa. When he made this decision, his colleagues said he was crazy, and his from the board of directors in Silicon Valley to the red soil of malaria and war in Africa, from private planes to run-down off-road vehicles bumpy on muddy roads. Isn't Richard the same desert that Abraham crossed? He said, in Silicon Valley, I was just continuing a script that had already been set, extremely successful, but incredibly mediocre. But in Africa, I am truly involved in creating life. I gave up visible comfort but gained extreme freedom of my soul. Whether you are a 30-year-old youth or a 70-year-old elder, each of us has our own city of UR in our lives. This city may be your stable but painful job that makes you feel like a zombie every day. This city may be a relationship that you have been trapped in for a long time, full of internal conflicts but afraid to leave. This city may also be your tightly held social title, face, or extreme dependence on money for comforted to the point where it is like boiling a frog in warm water, slowly devouring all the possibilities and great calling in your life. The story of Abraham sternly questions us, have you sold the starry sky that should have belonged to you for the bricks and sewers in front of you? Let's continue on Abraham's journey. When he truly took that step, the story did not immediately reach its peak like Hollywood movies. This is precisely the most scientific and realistic aspect of this story. Abraham did not teleport to the promised land with just one click. He embarked on an extremely long and dangerous migration with his wife Sarah, nephew Lot, and a group of servants and livestock. If you take a look at the map of the ancient Near East, you will find a detail that is very logical in geography. Abraham departed from Ur in the south, and did not cross the Arabian desert in a straight line to Canaan, because if crossing in a straight line under the conditions at that time, it would be a purely suicidal act. He chose to walk northwest along the Euphrates River, taking the so-called crescent fertile land area, and finally arrived at a place called Haran. Where is Harlan? It is in the south of today's Tfaikai. Scientific and historical research tells us that Haran, like Ur, was the center of worship for the moon god at that time. Whether in culture, architecture, or lifestyle habits, Haran is very similar to Ur. In other words, Haran is Abraham's comfort zone 2.0 version. This is a very classic phenomenon in psychology. When a person decides to break the status quo and pursue great goals, they often experience a period of stagnation halfway through. Abraham stopped at Haran. Why? Perhaps it is because the long journey is too tiring. Perhaps it is because his father is too old to walk anymore. More likely, It was because Haran looked too much like his hometown Ur, and that familiar sense of comfort once again captured him. They lived in Haran for several years until his father Terah passed. At the age of 35, you decided to completely change your life, start a business, and pursue your dreams. You resign. This is your departure from war. However, you did not directly head towards that difficult promised land, but instead, stopped at a place that was similar to your previous job. As a result, after 5 or 10 years of rest, you are once again trapped in a new comfort zone. However, the great call does not allow for stagnation. After he died, the voice came to Abraham again. This time he must completely cut off the way out. At the age of 75, he once again set up his camp, left Haran, crossed the Euphrates River, and truly embarked on the unknown journey to Canaan. From then on, he was called a Hebrew in the original text. A Hebrew refers to a person who came from the other side of the great river, that is, a person who crossed the river and a soldier who crossed it. After crossing this river, there is no turning back. What awaited Abraham after he arrived in Canaan? Will it immediately become a great power? Is it milk and honey flowing all over the ground? No, this is the cruelest and most authentic test of logic in the story. He arrived there and immediately encountered a great famine. Can you imagine the feeling of collapse? You gave up your luxurious mansion in New York, traveled a long distance and endured hardships to reach the place designated by God, only to find that there was no food here. If it were you, would you point to the sky and curse loudly? You lied to me and you are. I eat grilled meat every day, but here I can't. Is this the promise you gave me? This psychological gap is devastating. This is also the most painful stage for many people in their 30s and 50s who are in the transition period. When you muster the courage to pursue your dreams, you are immediately hit hard by reality. Your funding chain breaks, projects fail, and people around you mock you one after another. You will doubt whether you have heard the call wrong, and you will be extremely eager to return to that mediocre, but not worried about food and clothing. But how did Abraham do it? Although he also made mistakes and even fled to Egypt out of fear, he was so weak. This is by no means a perfect image of a sage, but a real person full of human weaknesses. But it is precisely because of this truth that his persistence appears even more shocking. He experienced repeated failures, fears, and even moral compromises. But he never bought a one-way ticket back to Ar. He kept holding on to that promise tightly. Among all these tests, the most illogical and challenging to the bottom line of human scientific cognition is the commitment to future generations. God promises to make him a great nation, and his descendants will be as. However, there is a fundamental biological knowledge barrier here. Abraham is 75 years old. His wife Sarah is also 65 years old, and Sarah has been unable to conceive. From a rigorous medical perspective, this is called menopause, which is a complete This is an irreversible biological death penalty. Abraham and Sarah waited for a year, 5 years, 10 years. When you hear this promise at the age of 75, you may feel that there is still a glimmer of hope. But when Abraham grew up to 85 years old and Sarah was 75 years old, from any perspective of logic, science, reason, or experience, the probability of this event had become. It is like someone promising you that your small company on the brink of bankruptcy will become the world's #1 giant surpassing Apple's market value. And then you persist for 10 years. The company not only hasn't gone public, but also owes a lot of debt, and you are already so old that you can't even see your computer screen. What would you do in the face of such absolute hopelessness? During this long waiting period, Abraham and Sarah also attempted to use human logic to help. Sarah sent her maid Hagar to give birth to Abraham and gave birth to Ishmael. They thought this was the way to solve the problem. This is a common mistake that we humans make. When we feel that God's speed is too slow and things do not meet our logical expectations, we will use our own cleverness to forcefully push forward, often resulting in greater disasters and family conflicts. Until Abraham was 99 years old. Please pay attention to this number, 99. 24 years of wandering. 24 years of sleeping in a tent. 24 years of waiting. And a promise that is completely ridiculed in the eyes of humanity. At this moment, a miracle happened. Just where science Abraham, who was 100 years old, and Sarah, who was 90 years old, gave birth to the promised son Isaac. The name Isaac means laughter, because when Sarah heard that she would still have children, she secretly laughed because she thought it was too absurd. But in the end, this mockery turned into a joyful laughter that shook history. At this point in the story, we need to take a step back and look at the logical sequence of the entire event from a broader perspective. Why? Why let a 75-year-old person leave the busiest center of the world? Why let him experience? This brings us to the core and most important point that needs to be elevated in our video today. This is not just Abraham's personal success story. In this story, there is an incredibly profound altruistic thinking hidden. When God called Abraham in Ur, he not only said, "I will bless you," and at the end of this sentence, there is an extremely important statement that can be said to be a turning point in human history. All the tribes on earth will be blessed because of you. Did you hear that? This is the ultimate logic. Abraham was called out of Ur. He gave up everything. He endured all the hardships. He completed this epoch, making leap, not just for himself to have a son, nor just for himself to have a piece of land. His personal sacrifice. Because of Abraham's obedience, he became the ancestor of the nation of Israel. Countless prophets, laws, and scriptures have been born from this nation. More importantly, from this bloodline, Jesus of Nazareth ultimately emerged, changing the lives of billions of people worldwide and the course of humanity. That is why today, whether in Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, Abraham is revered as the father of faith. A 75-year-old man's turn on the Mesopotamian plain ultimately illuminated the spiritual sky of 5 billion people worldwide. This is the highest level of... Now, please look at the screen and take a deep breath. Let's map this story from thousands of years ago to your current life. Let's review the core focus we shared today. Firstly, breaking your superstitions about the current situation. No matter how prosperous war is, it only belongs to the past glory. If you are tightly bound by the comfort in front of you, whether it is a mediocre job or a stagnant life state, you will never be able to see the great heights that your life could have reached. Secondly, accept Harlan's lesson. Don't stop halfway through the process of change. Don't let the new comfort zone devour your newly ignited fighting spirit. You must bravely become, cut off your retreat, and welcome a new life. Thirdly, persist in beliefs beyond logic. Whether it is being hit by entrepreneurship at the age of 30 or feeling hopeless in life at 70, you need to understand that many times miracles actually bloom and bear fruit in the impossible places of all science and experience. That is at the age of 99, finally. And most importantly, reshape your calling with... If you are just looking for a higher paying job or a more luxurious car, you could collapse in the wilderness at any moment, because that kind of power is too fragile. Imagine Richard mentioned earlier, he went to Africa not to prove how powerful he was, but to keep the children without clean water alive. Your calling is the same. Today, you gather the courage to break through bottlenecks, write, start a business, repair a relationship, and pursue that seemingly unattainable dream. This is not only to redeem yourself, but also because there is someone, a group, or they need you to bravely take that step, because your success, your breakthrough, and your sharing will become a huge blessing in their lives. Your bravery is like a torch that illuminates the darkness of others. If you keep hiding behind the sturdy brick walls of your city, enjoying your personal small joys, you will forever deprive the world of the opportunity to receive blessings from you. So, whether you are at the crossroads of confusion at the age of 30, experiencing the pains of a midlife crisis at 50, or feeling hopeless at 70, I want to say to you, listen to that small yet steadfast voice deep within your heart. The journey across the river that belongs to you will never... Don't be afraid to lose your existing bricks and tiles, because there is a vast starry sky waiting for you ahead. Be brave to take your personal steps, not to escape, but to become a blessing to this world, because of the countless tribes on earth. Perhaps one... Thank you for accompanying me on this spiritual journey spanning 4,000 years. If you feel that today's content has hit your heart or given you a little strength to step out of your comfort zone, please share this video with those friends around you who are hesitating, struggling, and in need of encouragement. Let's become brave river crossers together.